My stitches were still fresh when my husband flicked a soaked 20 at my shoes and told me to take the bus, because my blood and my baby's spit up might ruin his leather seats. My name is Raina. I'm 28, and I work as a patient advocate for a hospital network in Chicago, which means I spend my days translating fear into paperwork, making sure people don't get steamrolled when they're too exhausted to fight. I never imagined I'd be the one standing outside my own hospital, shaking, holding my 3-day-old son like a fragile secret. It was late afternoon, the kind of gray that makes downtown feel like it's holding its breath. Wind pushed damp air down the street, carrying that metallic smell that always comes right before a storm. I stood in the pickup lane outside Northwestern with one arm clamped around a thick bundle of blankets, and the other hand gripping a duffel bag that felt twice my body weight. Every small shift pulled at the incision across my lower belly. It wasn't just pain. It was a hot, tearing reminder that my body had been cut open and stitched back together, and that I was supposed to be healing, not hauling luggage and a newborn like a tired traveler. The nurse who wheeled me out had asked, gently, "Is your husband close?" I lied with a smile that felt like it cracked my face. "He's circling. He hates traffic." I didn't want pity. I didn't want that look people give you when they realize you're alone in a moment that was supposed to be shared. So I watched the automatic doors close behind her and stood there like a statue, trying not to tremble. When a glossy black SUV rolled up, my heart actually lifted. For one stupid second, I let myself picture something normal. Griffin jumping out, taking the bag, kissing my forehead, looking at our son like the world had changed. The SUV stopped directly in front of me. The window lowered, and it wasn't relief I saw. It was Genevieve. My mother-in-law's face was perfectly made up, hair smoothed into the same polished style she wore to charity lunches. She didn't look at the baby first. She looked at me, like I was a stain she couldn't get out of fabric. In the back seat, Sloane, my sister-in-law, was angled toward her phone, thumb moving fast. She didn't glance up once, and in the driver's seat, Griffin stared straight ahead behind sunglasses, jaw set, as if I was a task he'd been forced to complete. He didn't turn off the engine. He didn't get out. I stepped closer anyway because my body still remembered love, even if my brain was starting to catch up. "Griffin," I said softly. "Thank God I can't lift anything. My stitches are killing me." His head tilted just enough to acknowledge sound. Then his eyes flicked down, not to our son, but to the pale interior of the car. The seats were that creamy, expensive leather that he bragged about like it was art. He clicked his tongue, the way he did when the dishwasher wasn't loaded his way. "You're getting in dress like that," he said. I stared at him, confused. I was wearing a simple cotton dress. Clean. The only thing that looked messy was me, the human being who had just bled and shook and vomited through 36 hours of labor before they finally cut me open. "This is clean," I said, voice thin. "It's all I had. Please just unlock the door, the baby." Genevieve's laugh sliced through the air. "Raina, please, look at this car. Griffin just had it detailed." My mouth opened, then closed. I couldn't find a response that wasn't disbelief. "You just gave birth," she continued, like she was reading from a list. "Hospital smell, antiseptic, blood, and a newborn, spit up, leaks. You want him to ruin his seats." My son stirred against my chest, a tiny, sleepy sound, and my eyes burned. "That's his son," I said. "That's your grandson." Sloane finally looked up, face pinched in annoyance. "We're going to dinner," she said. "It's a celebration. Griffin closed something huge today. We're dressed. You're not." Her gaze dropped to my damp hair, my plain dress, my swollen hands. "It's kind of gross," she added, like she was commenting on spoiled milk. I looked at Griffin, waiting for him to correct her. Waiting for him to do the simplest thing a husband could do, a father could do. He didn't. Instead, he leaned his elbow on the window frame and sighed like I was exhausting him. "Just take the bus," he said. "It's not far." I blinked. "The bus. It's rush hour," he replied. "The car's full." I looked past him. 3 rows, space everywhere. Empty seats that might as well have been guarded by electric fences. Genevieve waved a manicured hand. "Stop making it dramatic. Women do this all the time." "I had surgery," I whispered. "I can barely stand." Griffin's mouth tightened. "You always have an excuse." That sentence hit harder than the wind. Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out a crumpled bill, and tossed it down. It fluttered like trash, landed in a puddle. The water darkened it immediately. "There," he said. "That's more than enough. Take the bus. Get yourself something if you're hungry." The world narrowed to that wet 20 at my feet. My hands shook, not from cold, but from the shock of realizing how quickly a person can decide you're less valuable than an object. I stared at him. "You want me to carry our baby onto a crowded bus? In the rain?" Genevieve snapped. "Be grateful he gave you money at all." Sloane smirked. "Maybe you'll feel independent like you always claim you are." And then Genevieve turned slightly toward Griffin, like I wasn't even there. "Roll up the window. The humidity is going to ruin the cooling." Griffin pressed the button. The tinted glass rose between us, slow and final, sealing them in their warm, expensive world while I stood outside with my raw body and my newborn. The SUV pulled away. The tires cut through the puddle and splashed dirty water up the front of my dress. Like punctuation, the first fat drops of rain hit the sidewalk. Then more. Then a sudden sheet, as if the sky had been waiting for my humiliation to be complete. People rushed for cover. I didn't move. My son made a small sound, and that broke whatever spell I was in. I bent down, pain ripping through my abdomen so sharply I almost blacked out, and I grabbed the soaked bill, not because I needed it, because I wanted to remember the exact weight of it. I wanted proof I could hold in my hand. I tucked the money into my phone case, right behind the cracked plastic, like a pressed flower from the day my marriage finally died. I started walking. Each step felt like my stitches were pulling apart. The duffel bag dragged behind me, heavy with dirty clothes and the last of my dignity. I kept my son tucked tight against my chest, shielding his face with the edge of my cardigan. The rain soaked through everything anyway. Half a block, another half. The bus stop might as well have been another city. Cars hissed past, bright headlights smearing in the wet. People glanced at me, then looked away quickly, like compassion might be contagious. Under the shelter, my baby began to cry. A small, desperate sound that made my chest tighten until I could barely breathe. "I know," I whispered into the blanket. "I know, I'm sorry. Quick real-life pause. When I'm editing these late at night, I get tired, and your comments are what keep me going. Hit like, subscribe, and tell me your city, state, or country." All right, back to the story. The bus arrived with a groan of brakes and a blast of cold air. It was packed. Wet coats, tired faces, phones glowing. No one moved. I stepped inside and felt every eye flick to the baby, then away. I stood near the door, swaying with the motion, trying not to wince when the bus jerked forward. Pain pulsed in my belly in time with each bump. No one offered a seat. My arms trembled from holding my son and the bag. My legs shook like they didn't trust me anymore. Then an older man stood up. He looked like he'd been working all day, hands rough, clothes plain, eyes kind. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "please take it." I lowered myself into the seat so slowly I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from crying out. "Thank you," I managed. "Thank you so much." He nodded like it was nothing. The bus rolled through downtown, rain streaking the windows, city lights blurring into watery lines. My baby finally settled, warm against me, and I leaned my head back, exhausted in a way that went deeper than sleep. My phone buzzed. A notification. Live video. Sloane. I should have ignored it. I should have protected whatever was left of my heart. But something colder than pain made my finger tap the screen. The image loaded into a bright, glittering restaurant. Gold lighting, white tablecloths, a platter of steak being sliced like a performance. Laughter, loud and careless. Sloane angled the camera toward Griffin. He was smiling, actually smiling, cheeks flushed with confidence. He raised a glass. Genevieve leaned into frame, laughing, eyes sparkling like she'd just won something. Sloane read comments out loud, delighted. "He's treating us," she chirped, voice high, "because my brother is thriving." Then she tilted the phone toward Genevieve. "Tell them what you said about her cooking." Genevieve laughed with her whole chest. "Oh, honey, don't even compare this to that bland little whatever she makes. And thank God she's not here. She kills the mood. Always gloomy, always dragging energy down." My throat went tight. Griffin chuckled. "I do feel a little bad," he said, like I was a stray dog he'd stepped over. "She's probably on a bus right now, but she wanted to be independent. We're just supporting her growth." Sloane squealed. "And she tells those weird stories like she's connected to money. Like, sure, people who have money don't shop clearance like she does." They laughed again. Something in me went still. Not numb, not broken. Clear. Because the truth was, I had been connected to money. Not in some magical, unrealistic way. In the quiet, paperwork way. In the signed guarantee, authorized user, account holder way. I had protected Griffin's image with my own name on the line, because he'd told me it was temporary, because he'd promised he'd take care of me once the startup stabilized. The apartment lease was under my signature. The business credit line he flashed around like a trophy was built off my credit and my family's backing. The fancy lifestyle wasn't his success. It was my silence. I exited the live video. My reflection stared back at me in the dark screen for half a second. Wet hair, hollow eyes, a newborn sleeping against my chest, a woman who had swallowed too much for too long. My thumb moved without shaking now. I tapped a contact I hadn't used in years. Reed. He answered on the second ring, voice low and alert, like he'd never stopped waiting. Raina. I swallowed. Yes. A pause, then warmth under the professionalism. Where are you? Are you safe? I heard you delivered. Your file lit up with alerts when the hospital discharge posted. I almost laughed. Of course it did. Of course someone noticed, just not my husband. I'm on the bus, I said, and I need you to do something for me right now. His tone sharpened instantly. Tell me. I watched rain slide down the window like tears I refused to shed. Freeze the authorized user cards tied to my account, I said evenly. All of them, the business line too, and revoke access to the lease portal for the apartment. Immediately. Reed didn't ask why. He didn't lecture me. He just breathed once, steady. Done, he said. Give it 2 minutes. I looked down at my sleeping son. His tiny fist was curled around the edge of my cardigan like he trusted me completely. I want one more thing, I added. Name it. Flag the cards as compromised, I said softly. So no one can override it at the restaurant. There was a beat of silence. Then, understood. I ended the call and reopened the live video. Griffin was waving a black card around like it was a crown. He signaled for the check with a smug little smile, leaning back in his chair like a king. The waiter arrived, polite, professional, holding the handheld terminal. Griffin slid the card in with casual confidence. I held my breath. The machine beeped. The waiter's expression shifted. He tried again. Another beep. And then, clear as day, even through a phone speaker and restaurant noise, the waiter said the words that made my lungs finally fill all the way. I'm sorry, sir. Your card has been declined. For a second, the entire table froze like someone had cut the music. Griffin's smile stayed on his face for half a heartbeat too long, as if his mouth didn't get the message yet. Then his lips twitched. His fingers tightened around the edge of the terminal. The waiter didn't look smug or judgmental, just uncomfortable, the way people do when they're trapped in someone else's personal disaster. That's not possible, Griffin said, voice sharp. Run it again. Genevieve leaned forward, eyes narrowed. It's probably your machine. We're in the city. Signals get weird. Sloan laughed nervously for the camera. Guys, it's a black card. It's not declined. It's the device. The waiter tried again anyway. His hands were steady, but his cheeks were going pink from second-hand embarrassment. The terminal made that same dull sound, and the screen flashed the same result. Griffin's jaw flexed so hard I could see the muscle jump under his cheekbone. Okay, Griffin said too loudly, then forced a chuckle. No big deal, I'll use another one. He slid a different card from his wallet, fast, like a magician doing damage control. I recognized it immediately because I had been the one who signed the paperwork to add him. He'd called it his corporate account, and I'd pretended I believed him because I wanted peace in my own home. Declined. A third card. Declined again. Sloane's camera drifted closer, not because she was trying to help, but because humiliation gets views. I watched her swallow, watched her eyes flick to the comment section like she was scanning for a life raft. People were already typing. Some were laughing. Some were asking if it was a prank. Someone wrote that real wealth doesn't have to prove itself. Griffin's ears turned red. His sunglasses were off now, sitting on the table beside the steak knives. Without them, his eyes looked exposed, smaller than he usually allowed anyone to see. Let me see, Genevieve snapped, grabbing one of the cards and shoving it toward the terminal like she could intimidate technology. Declined. That's when the restaurant manager stepped in. He didn't rush. He didn't raise his voice. He moved like a man who'd handled 100 tantrums without ever breaking a sweat. Crisp suit, calm eyes, soft smile that wasn't kind. Good evening, he said, voice smooth. Is there an issue? Griffin tried to pull himself taller in his chair. Yes, your machine is malfunctioning. The manager glanced at the terminal, then at the waiter. We just processed 2 tables with the same unit. He looked back at Griffin. If the terminal is returning a decline, it's the issuing bank, not our equipment. I felt my own stomach clench, and not from my stitches. From the satisfaction of hearing someone say out loud what Griffin had spent 2 years refusing to understand. Consequences aren't personal. They're just accurate. Griffin's voice rose. That's ridiculous. I'm not some idiot who can't pay for dinner. Genevieve leaned in, hissing. Lower your voice, people are looking. Sloane's hand shook, camera still up, catching every crack in their image. She tried to smile like this was all funny, but her eyes were wide, frantic. Just try it again, Griffin snapped at the waiter. Maybe you pressed something wrong. The manager's smile thinned. Sir, we do need payment. If your card cannot be authorized, we can discuss alternatives. Alternatives. That word landed on Griffin like a slap. I watched him reach into his wallet again, fingers suddenly clumsy. A few bills came out with the cards. Not many. He hated cash. He always said it was dirty. He always said only desperate people carried cash. Now, he looked like one of them. Genevieve's face went tight. Griffin, she whispered, voice low and vicious. Tell me you have enough. Sloane finally lowered the phone as if it had burned her. I could almost hear the end of the stream, the abrupt silence, the scramble to save face. But it was too late. That clip would live forever, shared and replayed by strangers who didn't even know my name. Griffin stood up, chair scraping. I need a minute, he said. The manager nodded. Of course, we'll give you privacy, but we will need resolution shortly. Griffin stepped away from the table and pulled out his phone, tapping fast. He tried calling someone. His expression shifted, not relief, but irritation, like the universe was disrespecting him. Then his phone buzzed again. A notification flashed on his screen, and I didn't even need to see it clearly to know what it was. I'd seen those alerts before when I'd paid bills for him behind his back to keep our arguments from getting uglier. Card security. Transaction blocked. He swiped again, eyes narrowing and his face slowly drained. Genevieve stood so abruptly her napkin fell into her lap. What is happening? She demanded. You said you closed a huge deal today. I did, Griffin hissed. This is a bank issue. Sloane's voice went thin. My followers are going to drag us. They're going to say you're a fraud. Shut up, Genevieve barked. This is not about your followers. But it was. For them, everything was always about image. On the bus, I stared at my phone until the screen dimmed. My hands weren't shaking anymore. My heartbeat was steadier, as if my body finally believed what my mind had decided. I wasn't trapped. I had only been quiet. A soft vibration came from my pocket. A message from Reed. All access revoked. Authorized users removed. Lease portal locked. Your accounts are secured. I swallowed hard, emotion burning behind my eyes, not because I missed Griffin, but because for the first time since I'd married him, I felt my own power sit correctly in my chest. I tucked my phone away and focused on my baby's breathing. The bus rocked, and the incisions screamed again. I pressed my palm lightly against my lower belly, breathing through it the way the nurses had taught me. In, hold, out. The older man who'd given me his seat glanced over. You okay, miss? I nodded. I will be. He didn't push. He just nodded back like he believed me. When the bus finally reached my stop, I didn't rush. I waited for the crowd to clear, then stood slowly, shifting my weight carefully. Cold air hit my damp hair when the doors opened. Rain misted my face. The city lights reflected off the wet pavement like broken glass. I stepped down, duffel bag in one hand, baby tight against my chest. My apartment building was only 2 blocks away. The walk felt longer, not just because of pain, but because I could feel my old life trying to cling to me with invisible hands. Halfway there, my phone buzzed again. Griffin. I stared at the name until the screen stopped ringing. Again, Griffin. Again. I didn't answer because I knew his voice. I knew how it would go. He'd start angry, then pivot to soft. He'd call me dramatic. He'd blame stress. He'd say I was making him look bad. He'd apologize without apologizing, like he was handing me another wet 20 and calling it generosity. I turned the phone face down and kept walking. Inside the lobby, the heat hit me like a wall. My glasses fogged. The doorman, who usually barely looked at me, suddenly stood up straighter. Ms. Reyna, he said carefully. Are you all right? I realized I must have looked awful. Wet hair, pale face, hospital bracelet still on my wrist, baby wrapped tight. I'm fine, I said, and surprised myself by meaning it. He hesitated, then lowered his voice. A delivery came for you earlier. My heart jumped. What kind of delivery? He gestured toward the concierge desk. A thick envelope sat there with my name printed neatly on a label. Not handwritten, typed, professional. I walked over, every step measured. My fingers tore it open. Inside were printed documents. A formal notice, lease amendment, authorization revocation. The words blurred for a second until I forced my eyes to focus. It wasn't just Griffin's access that was being cut. It was his control over the apartment entirely. My name was the primary leaseholder. His name was listed as an approved occupant, Conditional. Conditional. The same way I'd been conditional in his life. Approved only when convenient. Tolerated only when useful. A quiet laugh slipped out of me, bitter and shaky. The doorman's eyes widened. "Ma'am, I'm okay," I repeated, and my voice sounded different now. Colder, cleaner. I rode the elevator up, alone, the hum of it filling the silence. My baby made a tiny noise, and I whispered, "We're almost there," like we were heading towards safety, not a battlefield. When the doors opened on my floor, I immediately heard voices. Griffin's voice, Genevieve's voice, Sloane's voice, sharp and frantic. My stomach tightened. My fingers went numb around the duffel bag strap. They were already home, and they were angry. I stepped forward, barefoot shoes quiet on the hallway carpet. And as I got closer, I heard Genevieve say, clear as day, "If she did this, Griffin, you need to handle it now. She needs to be reminded who she is." I stopped in front of my door, my key hovering in my hand, and I listened to the next sound that made my blood turn to ice. A baby crying. Not my baby. A recorded baby cry, played loud on a phone speaker, like someone was mocking the sound. Then Sloane laughed and said, "Maybe it'll train her, like motherhood boot camp." My grip tightened until my knuckles ached. Inside my blanket, my son stirred, warm and unaware, and I knew with absolute certainty that if I walked through that door the wrong way, they would try to break me again. So I didn't open it. Not yet. I turned slowly, stepped back from the door, and pulled out my phone with hands that were finally steady. I called Reed again, and when he answered, I whispered one sentence that changed everything. "Send someone to meet me downstairs. And call security, because they're in my apartment." The elevator gave a soft ding behind me, and I stood there in the hallway with my phone pressed to my ear, the carpet damp under my shoes, my newborn's breath warm against my collarbone. Reed didn't ask questions. He just said, "Stay where you are, do not go inside. Security is already on the way." I kept my eyes on my apartment door like it might swing open and spit them into the hallway. Inside, Genevieve's voice rose again, muffled through the wood. "She's going to come crawling back. They always do, especially now. She needs you." Then Griffin, lower, irritated. "I can't even get into the account. Everything is locked. This is insane." Sloane laughed, that sharp little laugh like cruelty was a hobby. "Maybe she's trying to get attention. She's dramatic." I swallowed hard and looked down at my son. His eyelids fluttered. He didn't understand words yet, but I did. I understood them so well it felt like I'd been training for this moment my whole life. "Okay," I whispered to Reed. "I'm going downstairs." "Good," he said. "The doorman knows to keep you in the lobby. 2 officers are also being dispatched because this is a domestic removal. You're doing everything right." Domestic removal. It sounded so clinical, like a line on a form. Yet my hands still shook as I turned and walked back toward the elevator. In the lobby, the doorman rushed around the desk the second he saw me. "Ma'am, please sit. I called building security like you asked." "I don't want to sit," I said, because sitting felt like surrender. He hesitated, then nodded. "They'll be here in 2 minutes." I paced in a small circle, trying not to jostle my son. The marble floor reflected the overhead lights. It was too bright, too clean, like a place where nothing bad was supposed to happen. Then the front doors opened. 2 building security guards stepped inside, and with them came a man in a suit I recognized from the kind of meetings Griffin liked to brag about. He wasn't tall. He wasn't loud. He just moved with the quiet authority of someone who didn't need to prove anything. Reed, seeing him in person, made my throat tight. He looked at me first, not the baby, and his face softened for 1 second. "Raina." I tried to speak, but my voice caught. "They're inside." "I know," he said. Then his tone shifted back to professional. "I brought the building's on-call security supervisor. The police are 2 minutes behind us. You are the primary leaseholder. Griffin is not." Hearing it stated, that plainly felt like oxygen. Reed stepped closer, keeping his voice low. "Before we do this, I need to ask, are you willing to authorize removal immediately?" "Yes," I said. The word came out so steady it surprised me, because the truth was, I wasn't removing them from my home. I was removing them from my life. The elevator doors opened again, and 2 uniformed officers walked in. One was a woman with tired eyes, the other a man with a calm face that didn't flinch. The female officer approached first. "Ma'am, you called about an unlawful occupant." "I did," I said. "My husband, his mother, and his sister are inside my apartment. I just came from the hospital today. I didn't let them in." The male officer nodded slowly, eyes flicking to my hospital bracelet, then to the newborn. "You're recently postpartum." "Yes." The female officer's expression tightened in a way that told me she'd seen this before. Do you feel safe if we go upstairs with you? I looked at the elevator and felt my stomach flip. I'll be safe if you're with me. Reed didn't touch me, but he stepped slightly closer like a shield. We'll escort her, he said. We rode up in silence. The elevator hum sounded too loud. My baby made a soft little sigh, and I kissed his forehead, trying to borrow some of his peace. When we reached my floor, the hallway was quiet. The officers walked in front. Reed stayed beside me. The building security supervisor carried a master key fob. The female officer knocked once firm. Police, she said. Open the door. I heard a sudden scramble inside, a chair scraping, a hush. Then Griffin's voice, sharp, fake calm. Who is it? Police, she repeated. Open the door. The locks clicked, and the door swung open, just enough for Griffin's face to appear. His eyes landed on me, and for 1 second, his expression turned into something like relief. Like he thought this was a fight he could win with charm. Then he saw the officers. Then he saw Reed, and his face shifted. Raina, he said quickly, stepping into the doorway. This is ridiculous. Why are you doing this? You're scaring everyone. Genevieve appeared behind him, chin high, like she was about to scold a waiter. Officer, this is a misunderstanding. She's emotional. She just had a baby. Sloane leaned over the back of my couch, holding her phone in one hand like she was ready to record again. Her eyes were bright, hungry. The female officer held up a hand. Ma'am, step back. Sir, we're here because the leaseholder has stated you are in the apartment without her permission. Griffin blinked. Without permission, I live here. The male officer's voice stayed calm. Do you have proof of residency? A lease, utility bill, anything in your name? Griffin's mouth opened, then closed. He turned slightly, eyes flicking toward me, like I was supposed to save him. Genevieve jumped in. He's her husband. He doesn't need paperwork. This is their home. Reed spoke then, quiet but solid. It is her home. She is the sole leaseholder. His occupancy was conditional and has been revoked. Sloane scoffed. Occupancy was conditional. Who even says that? Reed looked at her like she was a fly on glass. People who read contracts. Griffin tried to laugh, but it came out wrong. Okay, fine. Let's all calm down. Raina, you're not thinking straight. You're exhausted. You're in pain. You're doing this because of the dinner thing, and I get it, I do, but you're overreacting. Overreacting. The same word he used. Every time he hurt me, something in me went cold and still. I shifted my son higher on my chest and looked Griffin straight in the eyes. You locked me out of your car after my C-section, I said, voice even. You threw money at me. You told me the bus was good enough. Your mother said I would ruin your leather seats. Your sister mocked a baby cry like it was entertainment. Genevieve's face tightened. That is not what happened. Griffin lifted his palms, gentle, like he was soothing a wild animal. Babe, come on, you're mixing things up. You're upset and you're projecting. Projecting, gaslighting, dressed up as concern. The female officer's eyes narrowed. Sir, stop. You don't get to diagnose her in front of us. Griffin's smile faltered. I'm not diagnosing. I'm just saying postpartum is intense. Reed spoke again, and his voice had an edge now. You want to talk about intense? Let's talk about the calls you made this week, trying to open a new credit line using her information. Griffin froze. My stomach dropped, not from fear, but from confirmation. Reed hadn't just helped me lock my accounts. He had seen what Griffin was doing behind my back. Griffin's eyes widened. That's not true. Reed didn't blink. It is true, and it's documented. We can discuss it in the correct setting, which is not this apartment. Genevieve's voice rose into a shriek. Who are you to accuse my son? You're some banker. Reed's mouth stayed calm, but his eyes were sharp. I'm the person who stopped your son from digging himself deeper. And I'm also the person who filed a report with the fraud department when he tried to bypass security protocols. Sloane's phone dipped slightly. For the first time, she looked uncertain. Griffin turned to me fast, desperation flashing through his face. Raina, why are you doing this? We can fix this. I'll apologize. I'll do better. You know I didn't mean it. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't have words, but because he didn't deserve them. The male officer stepped forward. Sir, you need to gather essential items and leave the premises. We're not here to negotiate your relationship. Genevieve stepped toward me, reaching out like she had the right. Give me my grandson. Let me hold him. You're making a mistake. This baby needs family. I flinched away instinctively, turning my shoulder to protect my son. The female officer snapped. Ma'am, do not touch her. Step back. Genevieve stopped, lips trembling with rage. Sloane finally spoke, voice too sweet. Raina, come on, you're embarrassing yourself. Everyone's going to hear about this. I looked at her, and my voice stayed soft. You already made sure everyone heard about me. Tonight, you just don't like the sound of your own consequences." Griffin's face hardened, and for a second the mask slipped. "You're acting like you're better than us," he spat. "Like you're some saint." I nodded once. "No, I'm just done being your target." Reed leaned slightly closer to the officers. "She has an infant and recent surgery. She's requesting an emergency protective order. I can provide documentation of threats and financial coercion." Griffin snapped his head toward Reed. "Threats? I never threatened her." The female officer's gaze stayed steady. "Sir, your behavior right now is not helping you." My heart pounded, but my voice stayed calm as I said the next thing, the thing I'd been holding back like a final card. "I have the live recording," I said. All three of them went still. Griffin's eyes flicked to mine. "What recording?" I looked at Sloane. "The one where you all laughed about me being on the bus. The one where your mother said she was glad I wasn't there. The one where you said you were testing my independence." Genevieve's face went pale. Sloane's mouth opened, then closed. Griffin tried to step toward me. "You're lying." Reed held up his phone, screen already open. It was downloaded before it got deleted. That was the moment Griffin's shoulders sagged. Not from remorse, but from realization that he couldn't rewrite reality this time. The officers gave them 10 minutes. Genevieve cried loudly, not from regret, but from humiliation. Sloane tried to bargain, then tried to insult, then went quiet when it didn't land. Griffin packed in angry jerks, tossing items into a bag like he was punishing the air. When he reached for a framed photo on the shelf, a picture of us at our courthouse wedding, he hesitated. His hand hovered, then dropped. He turned to me one last time. "You're making a mistake," he said, voice low. "You'll regret this." I looked down at my son's sleeping face, then back at Griffin. "I already regretted the mistake," I said. "I married it." The male officer opened the door. "Time." They filed out. Genevieve hissed my name like it was poison as she passed. Sloane didn't look at me at all, eyes fixed on the floor like she didn't want to see the moment she lost. Griffin paused at the doorway. His eyes were red, and for a split second, he looked like the man I thought he was when I met him. Then the arrogance tried to crawl back into his face. "You can't keep my son from me," he said. The female officer's voice was firm. "Custody will be handled by the court, not in this hallway." The door clicked shut behind them. The apartment fell silent, so fast it felt unreal. I stood there in the quiet, my body aching, my hair still damp, my newborn warm against me. I waited for the sobbing, the collapse, the shaking aftermath I'd always had after fights. It didn't come. Instead, I walked to the window and looked down at the street. I watched them step out into the wet night, small and furious and powerless. I watched Genevieve point and rant. I watched Griffin shove his bag into the back of a rideshare. I watched Sloane wipe her face and stare at her phone, probably already crafting her next version of the story. Behind me, Reed spoke softly. "Do you have somewhere you want to go tonight?" I turned. "Yes," I said, "somewhere quiet." He nodded. "I can arrange a hotel suite nearby, under your name only, security included." I exhaled a long breath. "Thank you." As I gathered a few essentials, my eyes landed on my phone case. The wet 20 was still tucked inside, flattened and stained. I pulled it out and held it between my fingers, a symbol of what they thought I was worth. I walked to the kitchen trash can, dropped it in, and didn't watch it land. Then I picked up my son's diaper bag, adjusted him carefully against my chest, and stepped out of the apartment with the kind of calm I used to admire in other women, the kind I never thought I'd earn. The elevator doors closed, and I felt something in me close too, not my heart, my access. Downstairs, the doorman opened the front doors for me like I mattered. Cold air brushed my cheeks. A black car waited at the curb, engine running, warm light inside. I slid into the back seat, my son still sleeping, and for the first time since the operating room, my shoulders dropped. I didn't win with screaming. I didn't win with violence. I didn't even win with revenge that left blood on the floor. I won with the quiet power of paperwork, proof, and a door that finally stayed locked.